My name is Jillian. I am one of CAMCO's community managers. With us this evening, we have Ken Dash and Dennis Yost from Risk Strategies. They will be discussing the insurance market and trends. As I stated, this meeting is being recorded, and we will circulate that to those board members who were not able to attend at request, and it will also be saved onto our website and on our YouTube channel. So with that said, we can get started. I'm going to turn it over to Ken and Dennis. So whenever you two are ready, you have the floor.
Thank you, Jillian. Thanks for having us. Just some introductions. Dennis Yost is Commercial Lines Team Leader at Risk Strategies. You may know us as Dash and Love as well. And Dennis is our Condominium Community Association expert. My name is Ken Dash. I'm the past president of Dash and Love and now managing director of Risk Strategies. We're a national insurance brokerage firm, and I oversee the greater Philadelphia area with specialty in community associations. So with that, what I don't want to do tonight and what Dennis doesn't want to do is kind of beat you all over the head with why, the rates are going up. Nothing you can do. I think I really want this to be interactive, if at all possible. So if you do have questions, please put them in the chat and we will certainly answer them as best we can. What we're going to also try to do is explain what's going on, but also explain what innovative solutions we're suggesting that you start to employ to stop the pain and to be insurable for the long term. It is not unusual, and you'll hear it not just from CAMCO, but your fellow board members. Insurance, my insurance went from 100 to 500,000. My deductible went from $10,000 to $100,000 for the association. What do? They went to 30 markets. No one wants to write us. Are we uninsurable? So I first want to let you know today that it's not wrong, but you are insurable. There are solutions, there is hope, and we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, if okay. The genesis behind all of this, quite frankly, is just last year alone, $23 billion insurance events in the United States. $1 billion thing that went wrong that resulted in insurance companies paying out that much or more. And you know it, the wildfires, the hurricanes, the hail, the tornadoes, the floods, even not in flood zones. We see it, we read about it, we're almost immune to it. But unfortunately, it results in the hardest insurance market of my professional career, which is over 30 years. So that is one reason on the property side. Because a lot of times we just think of property. But at the end of the day, it's not just property insurance where we're seeing significant rate increases. We're also seeing it on the liability or casualty side. So we use a term called social inflation, which I don't think does it justice. Forgive any lawyers on this call, but it's really legal system abuse. And it's as bad as it's ever been. And the result is insurance companies unable to underwrite. They can underwrite for wildfires and hurricanes and all that. What they can't underwrite for is a legal system that has just gone awry. And here in the greater Philadelphia area, we are now the second most litigious city in the country. So you can imagine just a simple slip and fall claim or owners suing the association or other owners, and what that can do. You can't underwrite for it if you have a legal system that really has no tort reform at all and no barriers. And then when you talk about other types of coverage and why their rate increases, you have reinsurance. So insurance companies don't typically take on the full amount of the exposure, whether it's property, directors and officers liability, general liability, workers' comp, umbrella liability, auto. They have their own insurance, similar to how you have insurance as an association over your deductible. And when those reinsurers now have new restrictions, raise rates, etc., that also has an impact on what your insurance company can do. You don't see it because you don't know who their reinsurance are, Munich Re, Swiss Re, etc., but they're also causing things to occur, especially in the residential habitational marketplace, where they see a good majority of the claims. And so that is kind of one aspect of it. I do want to turn it over to Dennis to talk a little bit about rate increases and not just due to what I just stated, but a little bit about something, you know, with construction costs and what has happened with where maybe you're building and the units were insured 5 years ago, and what has happened today where your building replacement costs could literally be double what it was 5 years ago due to replacement cost inflation. So Dennis, do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ken. So what we're seeing is large increases to rebuild or reconstruct buildings and your units. What would cost, you know, $120, $150 a square foot a couple years ago? Now it's $220, $250. So the prices have gone up significantly, and this was caused by multiple factors. One, you had the pandemic, which kind of screwed everything up, especially from a production standpoint. And number two, with all of these natural disasters that we're having, now it's kind of supply and demand. There was less supply, a lot of demand because you've had 23 $1 billion claims that had to get, you know, buildings had to be rebuilt, structures had to be taken care of, fixed. So all those extra supplies are now gone and just increasing the cost of the reconstruction or the construction. So what we're also seeing is that 5, 6 years ago, when a 5,000 or a 10,000 deductible was the norm, now we're seeing 25, 50, or maybe even $100,000 deductibles, you know, for your associations. So that, of course, then makes you have to increase your HO6 policies.
Thank you, Dennis. So I want to stop there.
Okay.
Jillian, if it's okay, and see if there are any questions so far as it relates to, you know, why insurance rates, but also just general premium is up. So it's not all rate related, but it's also premium because of the cost of the buildings. So any questions as it relates to kind of the obvious of why this is all happening?
Yes,
Yeah.
I have a question. I'm sorry, I
No, I
interrupted
was
somebody.
going to say, if you, once you unmute yourself, go ahead, or you can utilize the chat feature and I will read that out.
All right, I just unmuted myself. I'm too lazy to use the other feature.
That's okay, Stephen, go
Uh,
ahead.
Yeah, I'm a director on HOA in Pennsylvania, Bucks County, Pennsylvania, outside the Philadelphia area. And I've been here for about 3 years. I've been on the board for 3 years. And I try and explain to people what you gentlemen are saying. Uh, One of the interesting things, I don't know if you heard today or not, but there's a class action lawsuit going against the insurance companies for the use of drains and privacy. That just came off the press today. So where the heck that's going to go, I don't know, especially it's class action. So I guess there's a bunch of attorneys figure, hey, you know, party time. So in any event, I do, you know, appreciate what you guys do. I basically have my own agency. I'm a continuing ed instructor, retired from that standpoint, and very active in the industry, past president, Jersey, big I. And it's very difficult for people to understand, although you guys hit some great salient points. The public, a lot of them are even aware of it. And I guess my curiosity at this point in our area, and eventually, hopefully, we get around and maybe you guys can address it. I'm concerned, deeply concerned. We took a big hit last year, and I'm concerned. I think our policy comes up in May, and you know, read about the reinsurance. They seem to be a little bit happy because interest rates are popping up. but there's so many issues. And then, of course, we have in June the other next reinsurance issue. So just a, I don't need an answer right now, but I'm hoping in the course of talking what you might be seeing on average, maybe in the Delaware Valley area of what the premium rises you see. I think our premium last year went up about 51%, and that's with lack of claims. But we did have a tornado come through here 2 years ago, and that's off the books. So that was about 75,000. So uh, I'll shut up, which is hard for me to do, and listen to you guys. And just if you get the opportunity, I'd like to see have an idea because I'll be going to a board meeting next week, and I try and prepare them way in advance that the dance isn't over yet, and they look at me like they hate me. So in any event, uh, uh, I'm going to enjoy tonight's discussion. I know that. Thank you.
Stephen, thank you. Dennis, may I? Because
Of course.
clearly Stephen and I have a lot in common. We don't know when to stop. But Stephen, that was amazing. Dennis, I don't ever let Dennis talk. So would someone please just give me the ear like it's time for Dennis? Stephen, I wish I could give you an answer. I can't, and I'll tell you why. It really depends on the association itself. We have had associations that are fully sprinklered, non-combustible, fire resistive, little to no claims, and have seen rate increases as little as 7%. Not too much below that. We have had associations that are built, they're $50–60 million of frame, 5 stories. They don't have the proper sprinkler system. Maybe they have NFPA 13R, which is for life safety only, and not NFPA 13, which covers life safety and actually protects the building. Maybe they've had a large fire loss. And because of the way the market is, that particular association may have seen and may see in the future insurance rates doubling or tripling. Dennis and I have recently have a high-rise building in the city of Philadelphia that is fully sprinklered, relatively new, had a couple losses. We got 2 insurance company non-renewed because of loss history. We got 2 standard quotes, one from Philadelphia Insurance and one from a company called Cincinnati Insurance, 2 great companies that many of us know. Their premium doubled from 200,000 to 400,000. Didn't mean the rates were bad. It just mean the rates that they had were so good compared to what they are today. So I would suggest that there is no answer. There is no, hey, it's 10 to 20%. It really will depend upon the individual makeup of that particular association. And then also being best in class. And we'll talk a little bit about that on tonight's meeting. Just think about it as an individual. You could say, well, what's a homeowner's policy or an auto policy going to go up in general for all of us? Depends. It depends on that particular homeowner, the losses, the construction of their property. What kind of security do they have? Do they have any security? They have old knob and tube wiring, or do they have upgraded electric? Same goes for associations. If you're a driver, what's your driver history? What kind of car are you driving? You have pit bulls at home. I mean, so really, it's really in a hard market, which is what we're in and will continue to be. It's the individual characteristics of that particular property that's going to drive what your renewal is going to be. And why do I say that? Because fewer companies wanting to insure, so we have to make you best in class to get more competition to quote you. The more competition, the lower your rates are going to be, and the broader your coverage is going to be. Steve, does that answer some of your question?
Yeah, so sort of. Yeah, I follow you. Our situation is we have 208 units, and they were built in 1920. I'm sorry, in 2022, and they sit on pods of four units per pod. So we have a little bit of a spread there, which is good. And we're not the big guys, so we have 208 units, 206, 208 units, and our claim history has been pretty good. But I know that don't mean anything because just last year, like I said, it went up 50–60%. But I'm just trying, since it comes up in the end of May, And I'm glad for your answer because I do a lot of reading about this stuff, and I'm not a pessimistic type person, but I basically try and think positive, but I just don't see anything. If it comes up 7%, I will throw a party in my house, and I'll invite you guys, even at 8%. So no, I understand the response. I'm just trying to get a feel
Yeah.
for it because you guys see more of it than I do,
Mhm.
and I just was curious. And we're in Bucks County also. Not that that means
So what
anything.
solutions, Dennis, we're going to talk about what solutions that we're developing with CAMCO, quite frankly,
Mhm.
to help. What value can we bring to the table? I'll talk about a couple, and then Dennis, I would like you to speak about some of the preventative maintenance as well.
I think that's great, Ken, to jump into next, as we had a question. What action can boards take to lower our rates, i.e. higher deductibles or et cetera?
Well, first and foremost, we need to have an updated reserve study. Insurance companies will now want to see reserve studies to see if you have the money and you've done the homework to see what's failing, so you can update and upgrade that. So that's really important. They will also, and we review your rules and regulations. Why? What do you have in there? What's a requirement? All right. So if you're in a high-rise building, what do you have? And you have hot water heaters. Is there a resolution, or is there a hot water heater replacement program requirement that every owner must replace their hot water heater every 8 years? Is there a requirement that stainless steel braided hoses are on washing machines, that heat is maintained at least 60 degrees? So we're working with associations with CAMCO, as your broker should, to review your rules and regulations and requirements to ensure that you're best in class. Because now insurance companies are looking at all of this. What makes you different? When was your roof? And Dennis, you can talk about what is most important to an insurance company when they're underwriting, whether it's in the city, in a high rise, in the suburbs, in a high rise, or not a high rise in a community. What are like the top 3 things that they are most concerned about when they're underwriting?
Yeah, so I think Ken hit the biggest one. It's the water claims. Every association has them, whether it's coming from a hot water heater, a toilet supply line breaks, your washing machine hose breaks. What are you doing to make sure that that doesn't happen? What preventative maintenance, can you do to make sure that those little claims don't turn into big claims? The other thing that they're going to look at is going back to that reserve study. Not only, when are you scheduled to have these items done? How old are they? And do you have the money to replace these items in a timely manner before the roof starts leaking, before the soffits give way? Those are all very important things. I think the third thing that they really look at, and this kind of goes back to the reserve studies, your common areas. Are your sidewalks well kept? Are your retaining walls, they're not falling down, are they? Things of that nature. Because not only will that develop into a possible property claim, but that could develop into a general liability claim. And now you've got huge issues. So you're getting it from both ends.
Roofs, Len mentioned roofs as well. Roofs are critical. All right. That is an absolute, one of the first questions they ask. How old is the roof? Because they see claims and they don't want to pay them. They don't want to pay for a new roof. They don't want a 30-year roof and which causes losses, and then pay for a new roof. A lot of the companies now are making coverage for changing coverage. And if your roof is over 15 years of age, instead of paying replacement costs, they're going to pay actual cash value, or they're not going to cover cosmetic damage if there's a hailstorm and the roof's still good, but they just don't want to pay for a brand new roof. So that's another critical item. They're now getting really detailed. You have self-closing fire doors. So if you run out of your unit because there's a fire, which you should do, is the door going to stay wide open or is it going to close behind you? I mean, a self-closer is $100. That's it. But that could save a fire from getting out and destroying the building and causing a loss of life to others. They're getting really detailed about if there's chimneys and how do you know, what's the practice? How are they inspected? Who's doing the inspection? You know, dryers. How is that done? Where is it vented? What's going on up in the attic space of the residences? Are the firewalls that go all the way up or not? Is anything venting up into the attic? I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. And we can spend an hour tonight just talking about the more stringent carrier submission requirements. So it's critical that you, when speaking with your property manager and your broker, talking through all of these things that we're talking about to separate you from everybody else. Just think about what you would want to see in a perfect association and how is that being communicated to the insurance carrier or carriers. And that's what needs to happen. They have to make sure that the detail is there, that they're really selling you for everything that you're doing. They don't have the money anymore to come out and do inspections all the time. So they really are relying on the insurance broker to communicate properly what you have and what you don't have. And so I would say increase more stringent carrier submissions, reviewing them, making sure you're selling yourself. And if you don't have these preventive maintenance requirements in your rules and regulations, then they should be developed in conjunction with the recommendations of your insurance broker, risk manager, and property manager.
We have another question. Are there different additional criteria for a co-op versus a condo?
Now, I would say it's the same. You know, typically a condo and a co-op, even though they're different requirements for a shareholder versus a unit owner, at the end of the day, the insurance companies that are insuring condominium associations are the same insuring cooperatives, even though they're not that many here in our area. We do insure a number of the cooperatives and the requirements are the same.
Just another quick question. Nancy inquired if you write policies in Stone Harbor, New Jersey.
Do you mean associations or residential?
Nancy, can you clarify if you are referring to residential?
Condo.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay, good.
Fortunately or unfortunately, we write the good majority of the associations from Atlantic City on down. And it's, as you know, if you're on the board or a resident, it's a tough market and you're hearing horror stories. Fortunately, because of our resources at Risk Strategies, we have a number of markets that we can use. And again, that is even a bigger challenge. You know, when Surfside happened in Florida, you're now, Dennis and I forgot to mention engineer reports. If you've got a garage, or even if you don't have a garage, we do recommend that you have an engineer report. So that you can demonstrate that the building is structurally okay, number one, so there's no issue of collapse. If you have a parking garage, you're definitely going to want to see that for sure. And even if you don't have a parking garage, it's a good idea because you're getting ahead of, there may be balconies and you want to make sure that the balconies are safe. So there's so many reasons why you should have an updated engineering report on your property. Okay. So the question about higher deductibles and does it really save you premium? Not really. But what the higher deductibles do, either the insurance company is just going to mandate it. So when 10,000 a few years ago was the norm, 25,000 after that, 50 is going to be the new norm. Insurance companies just can't continue to trade dollars, and they realize that they also can't continue to raise your rates to the point where, you know, you're assessing all owners in a special assessment on insurance. Who would have ever thought that there'd be a special assessment because of insurance? But there is. And so the deductible is a good idea. It might save you a little bit of premium, but what it'll do is it will continue to keep you insurable because it's going to result in less losses that are hitting your insurance carrier. And what will happen is you as a homeowner simply have to insure for that association's deductible on your own policy. And so in addition to a higher deductible, I'm sure you've become aware of per unit water damage deductibles. Dennis mentioned water. You know, that is the biggest concern of carriers. And so you'll start to, if you already don't have it, you likely will in your coming renewals. And you should ask for a per unit water damage deductible. Again, keep you insurable for the long term. Dennis, do you want to talk a little bit about, for our, I think Stephen would be a good example, for our associations that have walking paths that are open to the public, and some of the concerns that insurance carriers have raised since they have found out that there are more walking paths that are not just open to residents, but open to the public.
Yes.
You don't have to name insurance company names.
I know. So there are some carriers out there that all of a sudden are concerned about public walking paths. Not exactly sure why they're overly concerned because, you know, Center City, Philadelphia has plenty of walking paths. They're called sidewalks. But anyway, they have brought concern about having public walking paths, and they are now denying claims because of these walking paths or arising from these walking paths. So what I would do is before you do your renewal, if you have a walking path that's in your community that's open to the public, bring it up to your broker. Make sure that the insurance carrier is not limiting coverage or excluding coverage for liability claims arising from those walking paths. If so, you need to market coverage and find a carrier that is willing to provide coverage for that, because that could be an exposure. Well, it is an exposure to the association.
Thank you. I also want to make sure that you're asking on a quarterly basis for your loss history. You deserve it. It's your loss history. Seems like the only time you ever get your loss runs or your loss history is when the property manager reaches out to the insurance broker and says, hey, I need loss runs. And then the broker calls up and says, why? Are you marketing us? You know, and, you know, because that's what they think. But what happens is you need to see that. You need to see if there's anything open on you. Maybe there's a subrogation that you need to follow and make sure that your broker is following them. If there's an open claim, why? Because you want to talk about that claim, whether it's property liability. And what have we done to ensure that that claim isn't going to happen in the future? If a pipe that burst, maybe you replaced all your risers. If it was during a freeze, maybe somebody's window was open and they didn't have their heat on, so you put a new rule and regulation. So again, you're looking at things that, and you're thinking as an insurance company underwriter, what are they going to think when they see a loss or losses? Well, how can we show them that we've done something differently to help ensure that that loss should not happen in the future? The only way you're going to know, especially if you're a new board member, you may not know what losses you had a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And keep in mind that insurance companies look at loss history going back 5 years. So they ask for 5 years of your loss history. So whether it's a directors and officers liability claim, property claim, liability claim, whatever it may be, they're looking at that. And remember, they don't have the capacity. So they're going to choose best in class. So who has the fewest losses? We're going to go after them. All right. So how am I going to get insurance if I have losses? You're going to explain what you've done to prevent them from happening in the future. So You don't want an insurance broker simply to just market it out. Here are the losses. You want explanations. You want a summary. You want a picture. You want to paint the story for them, if at all possible.
Hey, Ken, Steve, I have a quick question for you while you're talking about that subject. What's your thought on matter of record claims? We have one or two in our area here that we've been told probably won't materialize to anything, but I get concerned about frequency issues. Not that two claims are frequency, but you never know down the road.
You should. Dennis and I struggle with this a lot because we see loss runs and, you see an expense because the insurance company has to open it up and there's an expense on there for 500, 1,000, 1,500, whatever it is. It's closed
Right.
down and you see this frequency. Look, slip and falls are going to happen everywhere. People trip over their own feet. I know I do. And, so I'm going to hurt my knee. Does that mean it should be reported to the insurance company? I know this is recorded, Dennis. At Dash and Love, I wouldn't have cared. Risk Strategies, I do have someone to report to, but no. You keep the incident report on file. Your broker should keep the incident report on file. There's no reason just because somebody slips and falls that you're negligent and that you should file every single matter just because you're covering yourself. If you're not prejudicing the insurance, this is why you should speak to your broker so they can discuss it with you. Same on property claims. We see property claims that are made $1,000, $2,500, $3,000. You've got a $25,000 deductible, and you know that the loss is going to be under $15,000 or $20,000. Don't report it. You shouldn't, because the insurance carriers will look at it, and I don't care what anyone tells you. If they see frequency, you know what they're going to say. Well, severity, it's going to severity.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I would say, Stephen, absolutely not report every single little matter, but certainly consult with your insurance broker.
Right, absolutely. Thank you.
We have a question in the chat. In a reserve study, there are levels of funding where your reserves are today, fully funded reserves, and a midpoint. How do insurance companies look at this issue?
Len, they really aren't that educated, to be frank. And, we would, when they look at the reserve study, based on what you're saying, they really are looking at not the amount of money per se, as much as they are looking at, hey, how old's the roof? When does it need to be done? Okay, great. They're just checking the boxes when they look at it. Most of them really just don't have the financial acumen as underwriters to look and see what how you're funded today versus what you're planning on doing or what you're supposed to be doing in the future. So they're not even going to really look at the reserves. They're more so, unless you have a negative balance, and they're going to be like, what the hell? But they're really going to look at, hey, how old is this? When does it need to be done? When is the last time if you have a boiler? When's the last time there's the new boiler, transformer, generators, whatever it may be, HVAC systems, electrical, roofs? That's what they're looking at. Okay.
Can an insurance company decline coverage if they find that the property is in need of a lot of repairs and they don't have the funds to do all the work at one time?
Well, they can certainly, let's say you're insured by a carrier and they come out and they do an inspection and they see that and they make recommendations. You need to you need to fix this sidewalk. You need to do this. You need to do that. Whatever they give you time. Right. So they'd like you to do it within 30 to 60 days. They send out a recommendation letter. Then if you don't respond, they will normally follow up with us. We'll then prod the property manager. And then if it continues to be ignored, then eventually they'll send out an official either non-renewal or cancellation because they have to cover themselves, allowing you 30 days to comply with the recommendations. So yes, Joyce, they can cancel or non-renew if you don't have the money to correct a critical recommendation that they feel must be done, but they will give you time to do it.
Yeah, most carriers will work with you. They're not looking to just pull the coverage. Of course, it also depends on what the recommendation is.
And that's why sometimes there are assessments. You know, I mean, if there's a facade that needs to be repaired because, you know, I'm talking the city more so because these big stones, they can fall off, or there's balconies and you don't do something. Well, that's why there's special assessments for those types of things. If you don't have the funds, you have to assess.
Hey, Ken, Steve, I don't want to hog up the meeting, but I just had a couple of general questions with, all you folks' expertise. I read an article last week that dog bites in the United States were 1.3 billion, not million, billion. And I was flabbergasted at that number. And I guess it's more of a legal question on rules and regulations that I guess an attorney would have to get involved in, because we don't have somebody have an Irish wolfhound dog versus I call them little yap yap dogs, which can, bite you just as much. But do they have any statistic on condos, HOAs, and apartments, whatever it may be, if there seems to be more prone of activity there as opposed to maybe just a regular residential area? And that's number one. And then number two would be, I guess this type of rules and regulations should be more directed to an attorney than it would be, a board panel. That's my thoughts.
Yes.
So with that, I promise you, I will shut up for at least 5 minutes.
You're on the clock.
No, there is no data that would suggest that an HOA, a condo, a co-op, a planned community has a higher dog bite per person than a regular homeowner. Quite frankly, we very rarely, Dennis, we get a lot of claims today. We very rarely get a dog bite claims. Quite frankly, the dog related claims that we get are more for lawsuits from a resident stating that you're not allowing me to have an emotional support animal.
Right.
And even though there may be, rules and regulations, of course, about not, being a pet-free, dog association. So we see more of those type of claims than we actually do see bites. Do I get on occasion questions about, hey, can we have a dog park or let people run around and all this? And the answer is no. I mean, this is when you have to talk to your attorney, but that's a problem. That's a material change in hazards. Insurance companies are going under the assumption that you have your dog on leash at all times. And of course, at the end of the day, it does become the homeowner's responsibility foremost before it becomes the responsibility of the association.
Yeah, to your point, Ken, we've seen a huge uptick since the pandemic on claims brought against the association for associations that did not allow dogs prior, and now people want their comfort animals, not service animals, but comfort animals. Whether it's a dog or a comfort pig, people want that animal.
With all this being said, there really is hope, though. I mean, in what the insurance companies drove rates and premium. I mean, you may not remember this, but there was no increase in building values and no increase in rates for years. I mean, in many cases, Dennis and I, it was rate decrease after decrease after decrease because there was so much competition. And we look back a couple of years ago, and even though insurance had gone up significantly over the period of 2 years, for just about every single one of our associations, it was still either at or less than what they were paying over 10 years ago, just due to the rate decreases in a soft market. So now what's happening is the days of a 6 or 7 cent property rate on a non-sprinkler frame property are over. And so those rates are now 15, 20 cents. You know, the rates for a high-rise, fully sprinkled, fire-resistant building of 5, 6 cents are gone. They now be 10, 12, 13 cents, but also the building values are much higher. So we have seen a change as a result of that. I do believe that the building replacement cost values are now at where most carriers want them to be. So I think you're going to see a lot less of an increase due to values going up. And I do think you can control your rate increases by implementing some of the things that we talked about tonight. I certainly, with Dennis, will get this information over to CAMCO. So if any of you say, hey, you know, what do they say again? What do we need to do, or what should we do? We can certainly enumerate that in bullet points for CAMCO, so they can share with you and your boards if you want. And it will certainly be helpful for you moving forward.
We have a question here from Kathy Farzetta. What is an appropriate time frame to go out to bid and provide the board members with renewal information? Some boards feel they don't have enough time to review the information provided.
Hi, Kathy. Kathy's right. Whether it's due to
Hi, Ken and Dennis. You guys are the best.
Thank
whether
you.
it's due to an insurance broker wanting to wait till the last minute, whether it's due to the fact that they're just inundated, they don't have the time, whether it's because an insurance company just isn't getting to it, there's no excuse for lack of communication. And your insurance broker, and we try to do this, we don't do it every time, but we try, at least 90 days in advance, reaching out to your incumbent insurance companies. What's your plan? What do you expect to do? Okay, thank you. 10%, good account, whatever. We then talk to the property manager. Hey, here's what you budgeted for. It's 10%. It's a little below or a little above budget or right at budget. You marketed to 7 carriers last year. We think this is fair based on the market today. You can also lock it in early. So in the event you do have a loss or losses between now and 3 months from now, you know, you're protected. We recommend binding it. Or we can get the answer, Kathy, rates are going up 30%, building values going up 10%, deductibles going up from 10,000 to 50,000, and we shrug our head. Why? They've been good. They just had this one loss from 2 years ago, and other than that, they're doing fine. Their reserve studies look good, their this look good. So we would say to you in that situation, hey, we got this early indication from your carrier, but we don't think it's competitive, and we make the recommendation for you to go out. At the end of the day, the board or you as the property manager can say, go out every year. We don't care. We don't think you should do that, but we do think that there should be communication at least 90 days in advance. And you absolutely should never have a week, 2 weeks before renewal, the first indication of what your insurance costs are going to be for the next 12 months.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
We have another question. You mentioned best in class when you talked about rules and regulations. Where can you find this best in class measurement that insurance companies value?
Well, every insurance company is different. So one carrier might say, we think that's best in class. Another carrier, Dennis, would say, no, we don't think that's best in class, and here's why. So it really can vary between not just insurance companies, but you can have an underwriter in an insurance company that works for Cincinnati Insurance that says, I think this is great. You can have one sitting right next to them that thinks it's terrible. So a lot of it has to do with relationships, communication, and sometimes forcing them to come out to your property and doing an inspection, meeting with your manager. If you're a building that has a maintenance person, having that head of maintenance take them around, and that building engineer. So these are all critical things. I wish I could say that there is one uniform best in class that fits every insurance company. It just doesn't. And so you have to task your broker and your property manager to help you be best of class at the most strict, stringent way. And, we certainly can advise on that. You may not like our answers because it's going to cost some money to do certain things. But typically it will protect property, which means you're not going to have as many losses, which is good for the community. It's going to stop liability claims, and it's going to make you insurable and bring you to the top of the pile. I mean, even something as simple as having a tree company come out every year, evaluate if you're in a residential area, and making sure that your trees are trimmed properly, that there's no dead wood. I mean, think about where, some of your communities are very, very, very woodsy. And you know what can happen with these winds and storms and with all the rain that we've had, with a tree just falling on a building or on someone or on a car.
Great, thank you. Another question, can an HOA require residents to have an HO6 policy?
Dennis, you want to take this?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it a million times in rules and regs where associations require unit owners to insure for not only the association's deductible, but their improvements and betterments. And, so yeah, it is their responsibility. Now, tracking that is near impossible, because if you have 100 units, you probably have 100 different effective dates for those policies. So, making sure that people's policies are in place and they don't cancel 3 days after they give you the declaration page is going to be near impossible to stay on top of. But, you can tell them that they need to obtain coverage, whether they actually keep it in force. I don't think there's anything you can do about that.
Yeah, absolutely. In addition, personal liability insurance coverage, mandating coverage for loss assessments as a result of an insurance claim. These are all things, absolutely, if they're not in your condo or cooperative, in your condo declarations, your HOA declarations, your cooperative agreements, you should speak with your attorney. They can absolutely either add a resolution and certainly put it in the rules and regs. Absolutely. It's critical. And it shouldn't be may, or should carry insurance. It's you must. It is required. All right. So in closing, I want to thank everybody. Many of you I know, as those of you I don't. It's very nice to meet you tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about insurance. It will get better. I would say for you personally, and I'd like to close with this. We talked a lot tonight about the association, and as a fiduciary, that's your responsibility. But you're also an owner. And as an owner, we like to give some tips as to what you should do to keep your own insurance costs down on your HO6 policy. One thing is don't shop every year, because if you move to somebody, if they're a little cheaper, you may be losing discounts from a company you've been with for a long time, that if you do have a claim, maybe they have a deductible waiver. All right, you haven't had a claim in 4 years, we waive your deductible. Maybe they don't increase your premium a lot because you've got something built into your policy with Travelers or Chubb or whomever, which almost every policy does, which states that you've been loss free for 3 years. So even though you had a loss, you're not going to get an increase in premium. So I would hesitate to move from someone that you've been with for a long time. It doesn't hurt to shop, but just be mindful of that. Also, what do you have? Look at your policy. Do you have all the discounts that you should be getting for maybe being in a gated community, or having a sprinkler system, or having an alarm, or having a hardwired smoke detector? Check your policy in the same way that you might check your auto policy. See if you're getting credit for having an airbag or a newer car or whatever it is. the discounts can really be substantial to do that. And importantly, if you have valuable articles, whether it's fine arts or jewelry, whatever, make sure you're insured for them. Even if you don't have appraisals, you can still get blanket coverage because the coverage under your contents is really not going to pick up anything that's considered fine art or fine jewelry. It's just not going to. So please try to insure for that. And you still have to prove your loss. Many of us don't have receipts, for things that we've purchased over the years. But today, much simpler than taking pictures and keeping those pictures in your safety deposit box of what you have. You can just take your iPhone and go around your unit, and you've stored it in the cloud. That way, if you ever do have a loss, you can actually show an insurance company of yours and of the association of what you had in your unit before that loss occurred. So just
Hey, Ken, one last thing. The term I despise and hate on car insurance. Oh, I'm fine. I have full coverage. Guy's got 15, 30, and 5. I'm fine. If I have $1 million loss, I got full coverage.
and probably limited court to boot, Steve. So, yes, you don't have full coverage, and you should have a personal umbrella. They're very inexpensive.
Well, there's no such thing as full coverage. That's why I try and explain to people. It don't exist.
I understand.
So
anyway, but Steve makes a good point. You want to protect yourself. You want to protect your asset. If you have a pet, an animal, something, whatever, you can and will be sued. And so if there are ways to reduce your costs, quite frankly, increasing your deductible. You have a $500 deductible on your homeowner's policy to $1,000. You're not going to turn in a $700 loss. So get the premium reduction by having a $1,000 deductible instead of $500. Have a personal umbrella liability that sits atop your personal HO6 and your auto to give you that added protection. These are simple things that you can do, and they don't really cost a lot of money. Okay.
Do we have any other questions for Ken and Dennis while they're here this evening? All right, Ken, Dennis, thank you both so much. Very informative as always. Just a few items for those board members. I included both Dennis and Ken's contact information in the chat. And the next board roundtable is scheduled for Tuesday, May 7th at 6 p.m. via Zoom. And that will be on community events and outreach with our lifestyle director, Nancy Sanderson. Again, this meeting has been recorded and will be posted to our website and YouTube channel and can be circulated to those board members not in attendance by request. Again, thank you all so much for attending this evening and have a great night.